Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Milton School Building Committee. It is August 3rd at 7:02 p.m. As I typically do, and just for the members that are present, I'll just do roll call attendance. Nathan Hutto,
Present.
Bob Mayhew,
Present.
Scott Tereshak,
Present.
Mark Loring,
Present.
Peter Robersheimer,
Present.
and we got Tim, who just joined. Tim Lombard will be on in a second. And I know I got a text from Glenn Hoffman. He's going to be running a couple minutes late, but he'll be on. Carrie Hurley messaged earlier saying she's not available. So I think the only other one that may jump on is Aqua. So we'll just keep an eye out for him. The second
I don't
thing
have
on our agenda.
I'm still figuring out how to hear you guys, but I'm present. I heard you saying that before, Sean.
Good man. All right, gotcha. The second thing on our agenda is citizen speak. So we reserve the first 15 minutes of our meeting for any citizen that would like to speak. We ask that you keep your discussion to 3 minutes, and then please also state your name and address just for the minutes. I only see 2 people in the audience, so if they want to speak, they'd raise their hand, and not seeing any, so we'll move on from citizen speak. Third thing on the agenda are meeting minutes. So I sent out meeting minutes for 3 meetings, previous meetings that we had earlier, and then Nick Milano from our OPM selection meeting that we did sent a summary of that one. That was the June 8th minutes that were there. And then on the 27th, there were 2 sets of minutes. So the first set was from the OPM selection committee. So, Scott, I think you and I were the only ones that were present for that one. So when it comes around for voting for those, it would just be you and I. Glenn was present too, but he's just not here right now. So let's see if people have any questions or comments or edits to the draft minutes that were sent out for those. All right, hearing none. Do I hear entertain any motions to approve any of the minutes?
Just for sake of efficiency, I can be in charge of making the motions if that helps Sean. I assume we have to do these one by. Do we have to do these one by one, or can we do them in bulk?
We can do them in bulk, and basically the way we've done them previously is people would vote to approve them and then just say they abstained for meetings that they weren't in attendance for. So at the top of all the minutes are who was in attendance. So, if you just want to make that type of motion, we can just do it all in bulk.
Okay. Then I will make a motion to approve the following minutes, with the caveat that members will indicate abstain if they were not present during the meeting. This includes the May 27th OPM subcommittee minutes, the May 4th minutes. Sorry, let me do this in better. The May 4th meeting minutes of the May 27th meeting minutes of the May 27th OPM subcommittee meeting, minutes of the June 8th committee meeting. I think that's it. Do I have a second?
That is it. Yep.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll just do it as a roll call vote. So similar as I called out before. So Nathan Hutto.
Yes, with an abstention for the OPM subcommittee.
Yep. Scott Tereshak.
Yes to all of them.
Yep. Mark Loring.
Yes, with abstention to the OPM subcommittee.
right. Tim Lombard. I think you still having audio issues. And then, myself, yes to all of them. So we got a chunk of them approved. So I appreciate your review on that one. Moving right along with agenda item. Yes, sir.
You want me to vote?
Yeah. Now that you get your audio going, man, go for it.
I didn't vote.
Oh, Peter.
Yeah.
Oh, Peter, sorry about that.
No problem. So I'm yes while abstaining from May 4th and the May 27th.
Megan.
Yeah, the May 27th OPM subcommittee as well.
Okay.
Hey, Peter, are you able to hear me?
Sorry. Yep, we can hear you, Tim.
Yes, Tim, I can hear you.
I'm able to hear everyone on this call with the exception of Sean, and I think that is maybe an issue on my end, and it's very odd. I'm not sure if Sean asked me to vote on the acceptance of our meeting minutes or not. I've reviewed them, and I was present for those meetings that the motion was made for. So, for the record, I will vote in the affirmative to approve those meeting minutes, but I think I'm going to keep trying to log off and back on to probably the frustration of Sean.
Okay.
All right. I'll be back momentarily. Might do a restart of my computer.
Probably some type of special filter he has to cut off my audio. So let's see. All right. So we're good on meeting minutes now. I saw that Glenn Hoffman just joined us too, so perfect timing. Moving on to agenda item number 4A and 4B. We'll just kind of combine them because we're going to turn it over to our OPM who's with us tonight, which is Sean Burke and Seamus O'Connor, that you may remember from our previous efforts that we did before. I believe this is our first meeting where they're actually joining us here, so welcome, guys. If you could, I'll kind of turn it over to you guys, and let me just make sure you can share your screen.
Send a request now.
Yeah, and it just allowed you. It should be good now, Sean.
All right. Oops. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Sean. As Sean said, I'm Sean Burke from PMA Consultants. I'm here with Seamus O'Connor. Really two kind of goals here tonight is one, just to reintroduce ourselves or to introduce ourselves to people who don't know us, and then just to walk you through the first kind of stage of the MSBA process, which is designer selection. And certainly if you have any questions along the way, feel free to stop us. But I'll just run through this until someone stops us and asks a question. All right. So right now this is our project team that was presented at the OPM interview session. Myself as the project lead with Seamus O'Connor as a project manager. We also have some other staff that will be in and out, just helping us when things get busy during the MSBA process. It's kind of ebbs and flows of workload. So when we do need extra support, we have that, particularly with Kevin Nigro, who's up. He's up on the North Shore, but he had a huge project with a big MIPA component of it. So if this does go, to that spot near a wetland, he's just a great resource for us to have. We also have Julia to help us out with marketing and community outreach. Our sub-consultants here at PM&C, we have listed as our estimator. BEA, we usually use them for additional commissioning consultant or envelope consultant, and Onsite IQ partners with us to take pictures and things like that. All of that, anything that we have, they will have to get approved by the committee, any services that we want to do by them, but they are listed on our team because they are people who we use a lot and supplement our team with certain design reviews and other aspects. So PMA, we've been around well over 50 years, founded in 1971. It's a family-owned company still. Locally in our Braintree office, we have 90 professionals with over 40 of them are MCPPO certified. And then nationally, we're pushing 300 employees across the country. We'll be supporting this job solely out of our Braintree office. Just some past MSBA experience. We've done a lot of schools. This division of our OPM group focuses particularly on schools. So we have a long kind of track record and history of doing them. We're well versed in the MSBA language, and we know a lot of the key players over at the MSBA because we've been doing this for them for quite some time. So for us, we're here to support this committee and really kind of act as a we want to be part of your team and act as a team member here while we take care of all the MSBA processes to make sure we keep us on track. We're going to talk about designer selection, which is that first part of forming the team after OPM selection a little bit later. But we realize that the key stakeholders here are more than just your school building committee. It's your school committee, your staff, certainly the town administrative select board, Department of Public Works, public safety, community groups. So we want to get all of them together with the design team to make sure that as we plan for this project, we have all the stakeholders involved and we're listening to them. Again, we're going to advise you and manage you on the MSBA process. We're going to help organize meetings. We'll take meeting minutes. We'll really control everything. Whatever you want us to do, we will fulfill that role. And from an MSBA process, we know what needs to be done, so we can help tell you what you should be having us do. And again, we want to kind of operate as a member of your team, provide you with timely and accurate information, and we're certainly available whenever you need us. And Seamus and I both live in town, which is just an added benefit. Oftentimes we will attend, these community events to try to get the word out. We can help put up a project website if you want. We can do video updates, social media accounts, poster flyers, information, whatever we need. But that's a little bit further down the road. But just an example of kind of our outreach efforts and how we try to get the information out there. And we find that just getting good information out, accurate information is probably the most important thing for all these projects. And it really from starting on day one, as you might know, there's some misinformation that gets spread. So we do like to counter that with accurate information. Running through the MSBA process, there are 8 modules. Module 2, where you're at right now, is forming the team. You've hired us as your OPM, and the next step is going to be to hire the designer who's going to help us through that feasibility process to study all the different enrollment options that the MSBA gave you, and try to help pick the correct option for the town, then to move into schematic design with that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Seamus to kind of walk through the designer RFS process.
Hello. So like Sean had mentioned, immediately after we were brought on board, we started with the designer selection process. That's kind of the next step before we move into module 3, which is the feasibility study proper. So we've worked with Nick Milano and Sean O'Rourke via email to get the designer RFS sort of finalized and ready to hit the streets. It actually will be live this Wednesday. So this Wednesday, it'll hit the central register and we'll start seeing requests for the RFS. And so we PMA will handle distributing that and kind of tracking all the distribution for that. So I'll move ahead and we'll discuss kind of the overall RFS timeline. So like I said, RFS is ready to hit the streets this Wednesday. So some kind of key dates just to keep in everyone's mind is the deadline is the first week or the second week of September. So that's 5 weeks from when the RFS is live. In between that time, we will have a briefing session. We currently have it set up for the 18th, which I think is a Tuesday, for the morning. As we get closer, if the weather turns or if that date doesn't work, if something comes up for anyone on the committee, we can shift that. We just need a couple of days notice to send out an addendum to change the time and date or location. But right now we have it set for the 18th at 10 a.m. At the same location as the OPM walkthrough, which is the corner of Guile Roads and Blue Hill Parkway. So overall in the timeline, RFSs come in on the second week of September, and then PMA immediately begins their review, and we get ready for the MSBA designer selection panel in early October. So if we can go on to this slide, mostly says similar stuff. The next slide kind of talks about what PMA does once all the designer applications are in. We will do all of the kind of formalities of double checking that all the submissions are, accurate, complete, and they have all the required information. There's some information in these applications that if they don't submit, it can be an automatic rejection. We do have the ability to waive some of the requirements or ask them to submit them afterwards if the committee feels like that's appropriate. We develop all of the scoring criteria and backup materials that will be sent over to the MSBA for the designer selection panel. And then we create the same material for the OPM designer selection subcommittee for this school building committee. Ideally, we'd want to meet with that subcommittee before the designer selection panel, just so that we can get everyone's thoughts together before we head to the MSBA board. And then I think moving on, we'll talk a little bit more about the designer selection panel for the MSBA. So the designer selection panel meets twice a month, and it's mostly headed by MSBA staff and local architects and some other MSBA appointees. So on the panel, the MSBA and their appointees have 13 seats, whereas the district only has 3 seats. So the MSBA does take an engaged role in helping the district select an architect that is right for the project. Our dates currently are October 6th and October 20th. One of the goals that we'll have to set in the next month or so. Oh, sorry, Sean. You have your hand raised?
Yeah, it was just a quick question. Sorry to interrupt, Seamus. So
No worries.
on the short list, how does that get developed? Because the designer selection panel, is that the entirety of all the submittals, or who creates the short list?
So that is the first meeting of the designer selection panel. It's slide 19 or 18, Sean. Yes. So this is what we're going to do with the initial panel. So the architect shortlist is going to be taking place at that first designer selection panel, which is October 6th. So that's when, as a group, the 13 members of the MSBA and the 3 members of the Milton subcommittee will meet as a whole group, review all applications, discuss them, and then at the end, they'll rank all of our received applications. We'll give 3 points to everyone's first choice, 2 points to their second choice, 1 point to their third, and then no points to any other applicants. And then we go down the list of all members present, and we just add them up. So the MSBA does have a larger average. The benefit for the district is that the MSBA typically lets the district speak last in any of the deliberations. So whenever we go into voting, the district has kind of a final say before everyone kind of moves into the voting round. But does that answer your question, Sean?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. And just in the future, if anyone has any questions, just feel free to interrupt. It's hard to see when hands get raised on the Zoom. So yeah, thank you for going back, Sean. So for the designer selection panel, the MSBA has kind of guidelines for who the selection committee from the town should be. There are 3 local reps that one should be designated by the school committee. One should be designated by the superintendent or his designee, and then one should be the chief executive officer or a member of the school building committee. It changes town by town. It can really be whoever the town wants, just as long as the school committee is fine with the school committee designee. The superintendent is fine with their designee, and so on and so forth. We see any number of people who want to do it can do it. Sometimes it's voluntary, sometimes people are tasked for it. Is that correct, Sean?
That is correct. Yes.
Yep.
So hopefully you have a kind of an idea of who you want on the committee, and then we'll just make sure you get the correct approval. So if the MSB asks for paperwork, we'll have it available.
Right. Okay. And so we've already touched on this meeting. Then that was the 6th meeting. At the end of the meeting on the 6th, we will have a short list. Often it's 3 applicants get interviewed. I've seen them interview 2, and I've seen them interview 4. 4 interviews in a day is a little long, and so sometimes people are cognizant of that fact. So it's typically 3 applicants are interviewed. And so the applicants will have 2 weeks to put together their presentations, and then we'll come back on the 20th. And then we almost rerun the same exercise as we did for shortlisting. We got a new blank score sheet. We discuss all the interviews after they're over, discuss the pros and cons. The district again gets the last turn at speaking, and then we go into the voting roll, and the MSBA and the district will read aloud their choices 3, 2, 1. And the highest score is awarded the contract to begin negotiations.
Yeah, just to be clear, that first meeting of the DSP, we're reviewing just the proposals that have been sent in by the design firms, and they're going to be discussing that, talking about, what did you like about them, what didn't you like about them, to come up with the short list for that. And then at interview 2, the designers will be invited in to give a presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will present to that, and then at the end of it, that's when the vote happens. And you will be at the end of it, you'll know who your designer is, then you can start contract negotiation. And I see Mark has his hand up. If that's all right, Sean, I can throw it to him.
I'm going to assume it's all right.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Go for it, guys.
Sean B, could y'all, assuming then the school committee has to vote to assign somebody to this committee, is there language that y'all can, email to Nathan and I that we can bring back to the school committee around that selection, and also just the timeline by which we would need that prior to August 6th? I'm sorry, October 6th.
Off the top of my head, I don't think there's any formal language, but if there's not, I will just draft something up for you to use, and then I'll get you a date on it. It's usually like a week or 2 ahead of time. The MSBA asks us just to send them an email of who the selection is, but I just think procedurally it would make sense if the school committee is going to elect an official to actually take a vote on it. If you have a meeting, I think it's the right way to do it.
Yeah. Okay. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
All right. Cool.
And then, Sean, I think the next slide, key dates, kind of touches on that. So key dates, of course, the designer selection, the applications will be due, proposals will come in 2nd week of September. So key dates we'd be looking for then is at some point, we can do it before the 9th or after. We would look to have another school building committee. And that is hopefully when we can narrow down the designer selection panel committee members. And then following that, we're hoping to have a meeting with the designer selection panel subcommittee before the first DSP meeting on the 6th, just to discuss amongst the 3 of us, 3 of you guys, all the proposals that came in and discuss kind of strategies for the designer selection panel meeting. Those dates are flexible. We can meet whenever, and we're more than able to meet before applications or proposals are due in September.
Yeah, I mean, it would probably make sense to have your selection committee members, at or around the time responses are due, so that those individuals are probably going to spend a lot more time reviewing these, having to go into that meeting with the MSBA and provide their ranking of them. So I would say it would make sense before the 9th or right around that time to have that committee selected, and then give everyone a little bit of time to review those, and then to meet back with the designer selection subcommittee once or twice before the DSP on the 6th to make sure we're all on the same page and kind of run you through the MSBA process, how it works. I believe the MSBA also has their own kickoff that they'll run you through to explain this, but we'll do that in advance of their meeting as well.
Mm-hmm. And then the last date that we have is the a school building committee meeting to have designer introductions. Typically, we like to have that, as soon as we can, once the designer's onboarded. Obviously, typically meet on Mondays here, so we probably want to target that for the 26th to have the architecture team join us and just introduce themselves and kind of discuss their first thoughts for work plan and what the next couple of months will look like as we go into ed visioning and ed planning. And I believe that is it. So we can entertain any questions.
Being none. Good job, guys. So yeah, Sean, Seamus, what we'll do is, when we get to the talking about the agenda item about future meeting dates, maybe we'll, if you can kind of keep some of those dates aside, and then, as we get into that, we'll map out, the next month to 2 months on, meetings that I think we need to have. Seeing there were no questions on that, we will keep moving. So agenda item number 5, which is our update on Library College and the work with the DLR group. So Shanali and John are both here. So, so I'd like to turn it over to you guys to, discuss kind of your report that you have, and, we can dive into the details.
Great, thank you. Jana's going to share her screen in a second. So we've put together some key highlights from the report that we'll be emailing out after this meeting, just to talk about some of the updates from the last school committee meeting and some of the feedback that we've had in our conversations, and to go over the cost estimate that we received from Peter Bradley's group. Jana, do you want
Are you seeing, yes, are you seeing the little square at the bottom here?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, on my screen, it has the black bar, and I just wanted to double check that you weren't seeing the black bar.
No, we're good.
Okay, perfect. All right, so this presentation that we're going to go through today is going through the options again. You saw them last week. We've actually now articulated the 2-story option as well. Last week we spoke about it, but we only had the option 1, which what you see here, which is the existing building. And we did not have the 2-story option, and then we had a 3-story option. So we're going to just run quickly through all of those. And then we're going to run through the chart that Sean had sent us and asked us to update as far as what was requested from the district and what we were able to fit in each of the options. And then we're going to look just very briefly at the space summary comparison between the option 3, which is the largest enrollment option, and how it compares to MSBA, and what they, just so that it puts a little context in the method behind our madness, if you will. And then the last thing we're going to just look at is costs. We have actually PM&C also did our cost estimate for this project. So this is option 1. This was the option that we tried to make it minimally and minimal intervention. Let's see what we can fit in the building. And we only then added additions where it would benefit, like code improvements and ADA. So you can fit in here, and for pre-K, which is the purple, and the difference between the tonal quality, the darker purple is special education pre-K, the lighter purple is general pre-K. And then likewise, when you look at the turquoise for the upper floors, the lighter turquoise is general kindergarten, and the darker turquoise is special education, although not all of them are special education classrooms. Sometimes it's other services like OTPT and things like that. So anything that's the darker color is in some way, shape, or form serving the special education programming. So in this, we have the 4 general pre-K, 2 special education pre-K, that is one short of what was requested, so they're not able to get the full complement. And then we, at the bottom floor, we put the warming kitchen, and then we added a new stair so that we actually had egress from the B building without going into the mansion. Because remember, the mansion is wood, and we're keeping the kids out of the wood structure, so we added a stair. And actually that stair over there is in all of the three options, because from that top floor of that B building, which is the 1960s building just to the left of the mansion, we need that egress path. So that's on, I'm not going to mention it again, it's on all three of them. The other place then that we added, you can see the addition on the second floor and the third floor. The second floor, we actually added it so that we had handicap accessibility there, as well as there was a pre-existing oil tank structure below, and we were taking advantage of the footprint matches the oil tank structure. And then when I say structure, it's not the oil tank that is the structure, it's a basement that has concrete walls, and that's what we're building on top of, and we're then adding that addition to that. So then the next option, and by the way, then we've got 10 general education and 11 total, 1 special education. So again, we are under the count by quite a bit. The request was for a total of 25 altogether, and we were not able to get there in this one. Then option 2, and if you look at the presentation last week, option 2 was actually the 3-story option, but then it made sense to make option 2 2 stories and option 3 3 stories. So it's been renamed. Just pointing that out if anybody's going back through and comparing them. Option 2 has a 2-story addition to the right-hand side of the mansion. It's pulled forward of building C. It does not connect to the mansion, but it does connect to building C at the back. And as I mentioned last week, one of the reasons why we did pull this forward was twofold. One, we're actually trying to make it the new entry and make it more front and, present, front and center, if you will, as well as it allowed us to build into the hill, which actually helps us in the way that the number of floors are counting, and it makes it less than, seem less massive, because you only see, from this, you only see 1.5 stories from Adams Street, and as you drive down into the parking lot. So the first floor, again, it exits directly at grade out the back. So kids from the pre-K, you could work your drop-off sequencing so that if the little kids were in strollers and things like that, they actually can enter at their floor. But they also then can go directly out into playgrounds. And there's an outdoor play in a courtyard that is at the same level as the basement, what they call basement in building B, but it's at the same, it's technically it's actually up a couple of steps from building C. But you can actually enter there at grade as well. So that allows them to have access through steps and ramp from the new addition, allows them to have access from the building B over there on the other side, and it gives a nice little private courtyard if they didn't want to go out to the bigger play area that is out by the big tree. At this lower level, then on the far right is new receiving. The existing building does not have a loading area. When you go out there, the dumpsters are just being parked out back. They're actually parked out back in the far upper left corner behind the C building there, where that red arrow is pointed towards the existing stair. They're just hanging out there. So we feel like it's really important for this population, as well as just tidiness, that we have a proper receiving and trash and custodial area. Then the other thing that is just then across the hallway from that is kitchen storage, and an area that would also include some space for mechanical, and then the library. What is nice about the site, though, is because of the constantly going downhill towards that back courtyard, by the time you get to where that red arrow is, you're at grade, pretty much, and the kids can exit. And it also means that yellow, and even the left-hand side of the library has nice, nice windows facing that courtyard. So it's not like buried space, at all. And then the 4 classrooms that are facing out the back are on this option, kindergarten classrooms. So you see 4 new classrooms with some small group rooms in between and some toilets in between. And they actually face then the new outdoor play area. The green area that has been added there is covering up the existing parking underneath. We are actually reducing the amount of parking and increasing the amount of green space, but we still have plenty of spaces. And in fact, one of the things that, if this project goes forward, definitely you should look at how many spaces you have, and possibly even more of it could be turned over to green space once you meet the counts for the staff and visitors. A commuter college has a very different requirements than a pre-K when everybody is getting dropped off and it's really only the staff and a few visitors that are needing to park. So then the other wing, which is the purple existing wing, that is again pre-K, but this time we picked up, instead of the warming kitchen down there in the lowest floor of building B, we do have now the 7th pre-K classroom. This option then you'll see at the third floor then is just kindergarten and there's no addition. So the middle floor is same for this option and the 3-story option. So you enter right there in the center. There's a vestibule. You can go right into the admin. The nurse is already also in that area. And so you can have a secure vestibule where visitors can enter and then access the main corridors of the facility. Kindergarten, again, is on this level, as well as then in the existing building at the back, building C. Then you'll notice the pink spaces. The pink spaces are specials, similar to the library, which is in pink. And so you have a multi-purpose, I'm calling it a gym, but it's a small gym. It's sized appropriately for little kids. It's closer to 4,000 square feet instead of the 6,000 that you'd get in a typical elementary. A music space, again, sized appropriately for this age group. OTPT, we put OTPT beside the gym, and this is an advantage of this because sometimes the OTPT may actually want to spill in and actually use that multi-purpose space to do some, bigger gross motor kind of things. And then at the other end of the building, to have a destination, there's some art and there's some additional, admin space. Always within our minds, we were thinking, well, what can we use the mansion for? Admin space, other admin functions is something that we've always, said could work in the mansion. And one of the things that we were thinking is that this allows an admin at that side that might be part of the main, other functions separate, or even like a director's office, functions that would have people arriving and not going into the school, and they would actually enter into the mansion, and then they could, go into any offices within the mansion or that space that's just right there adjacent. So then as I mentioned, the 3rd floor has more classrooms and resource as well as some additional offices. I'm going to pause there and ask if there's any questions about this option because you didn't see this one last week. Is there anything? This one actually pencils out to being closest to what was requested in the from the district. This is the square footage that you really are looking for based on the classrooms that were requested. All right. Any questions? I don't see any. And by the way, like other people have mentioned, I won't necessarily see if you raise your hand, so feel free to shout it out if you do want me to pause or stop me in any way. So this is the 3-story option 3. It is the same as what you saw last week. This provides for growth. This is the one that has what we call a design capacity of the 383 students for kindergarten and the 154 students for the pre-K and all-day pre-K, as opposed to the other one had 4 of those classrooms were half day. They both would have 154 students, but in the other one, you only have 94 FTEs for pre-K, i.e. only 94 at a time can be in the building because that's how many, spaces are available. Whereas this one, actually, those half day now could attend full day. Now that opens you up to possibilities. Not only, you could still have some of those classrooms half day. It may be that some parents maybe want that. So you could then also increase it if like suddenly you wanted to, provide more pre-K for people in the district, or you had a lot of requests for that. It gives you that flexibility to go either direction, to either increase your population or meet the 154 just as full day. Then on the second floor, that is the same as what we saw. And Shanali, you didn't include the third floor. That's the second floor twice. Oops,
sorry.
Um,
I'll fix that before I email it out tonight.
The second floor is the same as the other one, and the third floor, the multipurpose is double height, and what is admin nurse becomes another classroom. But because it's very much the same. And then the other side at the third floor is also the same as what it was in the other option, where you just have the kindergarten classrooms repeated. So that is that option. And your counts here, you have 9 general classrooms, 2 special education, and then you have 20 general classrooms for kindergarten, and you can have up to 2 special education there as well. So, and I will say one thing about special education. The numbers seem to be increasing, and I don't know if your district has experienced this, but one of the other reasons why, since this is supposed to be a 50-year building and not just a 10 or 15-year building, is if the numbers keep going up, then it may be just a good idea to plan for some extra classrooms. And the other thing is you would want to do a demographic study. I mean, that's where this would actually start in determining a final, count for the design capacity. So that though, if you needed more special education there is also no difference between pre-K sizing and K sizing of classrooms. So you also could flex back and forth if you needed more than what was on that first floor. Because you enter at a middle level, you enter at the middle from the front, and you can also exit at the lower level. You can put those little kids on either floor and not have them go upstairs. And you're legally allowed to put them one floor up or down on a stairs, but it's most of the time for the little kids, we really try to keep them at grade so that it's easy for them to get in and out of the building. This scenario, this site, the way that you're building into the hill actually allows you to do that. So these 3 axons are just all taken from the same direction. And you can see then the first one just has a little bit of, addition over here in the center there. The white is the mansion. And then in this option, you can see the 2 stories. You can see how the grade is sloping. And so by the time you get to the back, you're actually, completely above grade. But when here, you're that kitchen and receiving area is buried. And then over here, that 3rd story that gets added, which is making it the same height as the existing building C building. So these are just some axons to help you imagine how it's like sitting on the site. It still has, a good feel around it in either case. Because of the hill, I actually think that the 3-story also does not feel, overly large or anything like that. And I will also just want to qualify, when we did the option 3, we were kind of thinking of it as like, what would we do if we maxed out what we felt comfortable, both from an enrollment as well as from on the site? That doesn't mean you can't build less. We wanted to just show you what it would look like as a sort of okay, well, this is the kind of the biggest footprint you might want to consider, but then you can always build less. I don't want anybody to think, oh my goodness, if you do buy it, you're roped into doing one of these 3 options. It's just showing you the range of what's possible, not an absolute in any, in any of the cases. So again, this has the construction. It has the same information as what was above, but it also has the construction costs. And it's interesting that black bar is making it so that I cannot read the bottom line of the construction costs on mine. Here we go.
So
I got it. Okay, go for it.
Okay. So so the construction cost is what we received from PMC, and then we did an escalation of roughly 30% to get to the overall project cost. So that's going to include all of your designer fees, permitting, all of those costs that are not necessarily associated with the actual construction of the project. And so for option one, which is your base option, your total project costs were coming in with an estimate of roughly $42 million. And all of these estimates from Peter Bradley do include an escalation fee. So then for option two, which is your two-story option, your project cost comes in just under $75 million. And then option three is a little bit over $85 million. So you do get the benefit of the scale of option three, gaining that extra, I think it's roughly 14,000 square feet for a less percentage of the overall. So there's a huge benefit to the scale of going to the larger scale financially, because your cost square footage and all that goes down because your startup costs are all the same. So there is a bit of order of magnitude between just renovating the existing building and then going all the way to option three. But then again, there's a scale of classroom gain that you're seeing.
The other thing I just want to mention, you'll notice next to gross area, it says usable area. The square footages below the 41 and the 54 is just the usable area of the buildings. I didn't when like comparing the sizes and also so that when you looked at it and understood like, well, how much square feet are kids actually going to be in? I didn't count that lower basement of the building C. And I also didn't count the portion of the basement below the mansion when it includes the mansion costs that is dedicated just to mechanical. Like if it was a basement, now we have those numbers elsewhere where it's the total. But I just was wanting you to understand, like if anybody starts doing like square foot per student and things like that, those pre-existing basements, if we were building those building from scratch, we may not build it like that. And you may not have all of that in an entire floor, but yet you can't actually do anything because literally like Sean, when he's walking down there, he's too tall, he's hitting his forehead on the beam. So that's why it's unusable space. And that's why I qualify that it's usable gross floor area, not total gross floor area.
I think Mark has his hand up.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't see that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. Appreciate all this. This is all great. I guess I had a question about the difference with the square footage without mansion and with mansion. Wouldn't the difference for each of those scenarios between the without and the with be the same because you're adding the same amount of square footage of the mansion in that second option? I'm just wondering why that varies, because it's 13,000 square feet in the first one and then 12,000 little in the second one, and then 15,000 in the third one. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So in the first one, actually, we did include some square footage in the mansion for some program elements for things that did not like teacher lounge, records room, other things, because that first option, like we were barely fitting things in if we didn't include some of the space in the mansion, but it wasn't things that the kids had to would have to access. It was only things that was staff only, could still be considered as an ancillary business use and not that. So definitely in option one, we took advantage of that. And I actually probably did that in option two as well. Losing some of the square footage over there on that third floor meant that I lost some different spaces and some of the admin spaces would have inevitably gotten smaller, and I would have pushed some of that into the mansion. So it makes sense if option three has the biggest difference because option three was able to truly exist on its own, whereas each one of them was kind of pushing more and more into the mansion.
Got you. So just to clarify, restate it, it's the with mansion is the portions of the mansion that you weren't creating programs for related to that.
Yes. It's like all in, total. There's about there's a potential without putting other uses, without bringing like say facility staff or superintendent or anybody like that. There's about 1,200, maybe a little more, maybe 1,300 square feet of programmed space that could fit in that could go in the mansion. And one of the things that's nice about like option 3, and again, this is why I say it's sort of like a bigger maximum versus any of the others. You could literally say that the mansion had a completely different use and people would enter and exit that building and never do they like mix or meet, because the egress in the mansion works without having the adjacent building. All we'd have to do is just do a little bit of work at the two like the vestibule and then the main entrance of the mansion to get them, to go through and make the other one handicap accessible. But both of those things are doable. As we went down the line, we started pushing into the mansion because we couldn't get it all to fit. So that difference is just what's left. That could be for other square footage. The other thing is that in all of these, it was a light touch to the mansion. If you look at the cost estimates, and we have the pages, the summary pages, but we'll give you in the full report the entire detail. It's a light touch to the mansion. Obviously, the cost would go up to renovate the mansion if you decided to go in there and do a lot to it. Nathan?
Yes, thank you. Would you mind going back one slide to thank you. I have 2 questions. The first one is, I think I know the answer to this. This might be a dumb question at this stage, but the rendering is throwing me a little bit. In building C, that is obviously we're doing the internal renovations, but in terms of the square footage of the building, is that as it stands now, or have we have not added, we're not proposing adding square footage to building C at this stage?
In option 1, you're adding the stair at the very far, let me see, can you see my cursor?
Yep.
Or I can also, let's see, laser pointer here. So we're adding a stair in all the options. So here, here, and here. I need that egress so that I don't take kids through the mansion. So that isn't all of them. In option 1, this is an addition, and it's so that we are taking out the stairs that are there. There's stairs that are existing. We're also infilling the boiler room. We're doing that in all 3 options to gain more square footage for classrooms in the building. And in doing so, then we're pushing out a lobby, an entrance, a terrace, and some steps. All of that happens there. If I go back to, so all of that happens right here. It's in the front, and then here. That's what that renovation is, or addition is here, and the rest of it is renovated. That entrance is currently not handicap accessible. It's just literally stairs up to a vestibule. It sets back deep into the building. It actually makes for interesting thermal bridging and other things like that. And by filling it in, you're getting more usable square footage in that building, as well as a handicap entrance, as well as then, since we're building on an existing foundation, remember there's again, going back, if you saw the rectangle, that rectangle is existing and it's below grade. You go out there and you don't see it. If you didn't look at plans and understand that it existed, you wouldn't know it was there. But that is where we're adding the addition and the terrace, so that we're getting a little bit of more bang for our buck.
Yeah.
So then so that is an addition there, but it's very, very tiny. It's literally like, I think the actual usable square feet inside is like 1,200 square feet or something like that. It's very small. And it's just to make the handicap accessibility in that entrance more viable.
Got it. Okay, very helpful. And then I have not digested every word of the cost estimate yet. Is there in there any allocation for landscape improvements?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. How do those vary? Obviously, between option 1 and options 2 and 3, there's needed landscape improvements, but could you just characterize those for us across the options?
So I actually think that it might be on the summary page here.
Yeah, so if you look at the midpoint, he's carrying $1 million allowance for all of the options. Part of it is the removal of the parking and adding the play structure area. So the assumption is that the play structure and that outdoor spaces that the kids would need would be the same in all of the options. And then it's just a little bit of the road work and site. So when we discussed it with him, this sort of assumption going into it is, even though we're building a larger footprint in option 2 and 3, the site work costs would be relatively the same in all 3 versions.
Okay.
And by the way, this is option 1. So it in this option as well, you can see there's hazmat removal. I don't know if when the Steffi and Bradley team did their renovation in 2013, did they remove a lot of hazmat or not? So we don't know. We didn't see a HERA report or anything like that. So that is just literally an allowance. And then there is also play structure in all of the different options. Here it's 750. I'll go forward. They actually may repeat. So here is option 3. This is actually the full 3-story build. And so you can see that there's the play structure, new roadway access, as well as new green space, because in this option, we're actually doing work, as well as then the $1 million general site work allowance that was in the other option as well. So all of them also have a design and estimating contingency, and it's substantial at this stage. And then they also have an escalation allowance. So that's what's on this line right here. And so all of those are your subtotal before adding the general conditions and building permits and all of that kind of stuff.
In just one comment on this one, John. So the option 2 that's listed here is actually option 3 from PMC.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
our option 3. So when people are looking at this slide, option 2 on this slide is actually option 3.
We only had their proposal was only for 2 options. So they did the smallest option and the biggest option, but we actually then interpolated the cost between the 2 by going through and subtracting out the top floor costs. So yeah.
And just while I was speaking to Jenna, so one other one too. So in all 3 options, a similar consistency across all 3 is infilling that call it mechanical space that you guys had talked about at our last meeting, correct?
Right,
Okay.
right. That mechanical space is not going to be useful. We don't use those kind of systems anymore. And it's so valuable. The square footage is so valuable to actually add it to the building. And it's just not very, it's not very hard or invasive to do so. The other thing you'll notice down here is if anybody wanted to understand, like, well, what's the value of the mansion? He actually included a deduct. So it's about $360,000. Again, that is not a full renovation. That is minimal work with like just doing roof work, some window and door work, fixing some things that need repair, and then some new systems. It is not reconfiguration. It is not like new bathrooms. It's not new paint, new tile. It's none of that. It was just to, bring it up to like a standard. And we asked him to put in, because technically you don't have to touch it. It can be considered a separate building. It is a separate building. And as long as it's like, just a party wall between 2 separate buildings, if you didn't want to do any of it and just leave it the way that it is, you could do that. We would have to put in some doors for separation between that and the building B. But other than that, which would technically count as part of building B, the mansion can just stay as it is.
Yeah. So one question, then throw this one at Peter for a second too. So if the building's considered historic, could we, basically take out that line item and apply for CPA funding, community preservation funding, similar to what the fire station's planning to do for Atherton?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, just asking, from the select board, I'm just trying to think, is that something you would see as an option that we might be able to do? I'm just trying to think of alternative ways to, try to look at bringing the number down by looking at alternative funding. If you don't know, Pete, sorry, I didn't mean to throw it at you, but just more of, I know that's an opportunity I think the fire station building committee is looking at right now. And if it was an opportunity, that's just another way of lowering the number.
Yeah, no, we're happy to help look into it, but I don't know off the top of my head, Sean.
All right, sorry. And Mark, I see you have your hand raised too.
Yeah, I can't speak for the Milton CPA, but I know generally, obviously, the CPA restriction is like the 3 different buckets, and so they have a certain amount of money that they have to spend on historical renovations, which usually there are less of those projects than the demands for open space, parks, fields, things like that, typically in towns. And so, yeah. Anyways, that's just my experience with CPA funding. Is usually it is, that bucket of money is less in demand, and so I think that's a good idea, Sean, and something that, if all this moves forward, is something we should look into.
Okay. All right, back to you, Jonna. Sorry.
So the only other thing we were just going to go over, you had, and then honestly, this is where it started with you put the base building, the 2-story addition and the 3-story addition. We're like, hey, that's a good idea. Let's change the names of everything. This was a list of everything that was requested. The green check mark means that it's in, the red X means that it's out for the various, and you can see that the base building 2nd floor addition is everything is in. The yellow means that then there's additional space. And again, this, as I mentioned before, the 4 classrooms, they all went to full day for the pre-K. So that's why there's 4 yellow checks. And then when we did the capacity and we optimized for a utilization between 85 and 90% is what you target, we actually then reverse engineered how many classrooms are needed. And we actually have 3 more in there. Now, what you will notice as we go through then the MSBA is that they actually have even more classrooms than, recommend more classrooms. When we did the utilization count, we used 19 students per class as our number, as 86% of 22 was 19. And we use that number divided into the total number of students, and that determines how many classrooms. MSBA typically uses 18. And you'll notice that they actually, if you put it in their formulas, say that you should be targeting 21. I'm just putting that as a comparison. So if anybody asks you like, wow, why do they suggesting that you have all these extra classrooms? It is a common practice that you have a design enrollment, and that's what needs to be determined. And that is, like, honestly, the most important thing is, what is your design enrollment? And then that determines the number of classrooms. I don't think that because you didn't do a demographic study and all those other kinds of things, that we have that completely determined, which is why we did all of the 3 options with the different, to show you the different scenarios. They also would recommend for this population 1 more special ed classroom. You see that in their column, it's 4, and it was requested to only have 3. The reason why things are highlighted in green, it's things that either is a deviation from, what MSBA would typically include or something like that. So it's either a question or a deviation from what you see over here. But your group of, Bernadette and John Phelan, Superintendent Phelan, requested 1 more resource room than what they recommend. And then the other thing that we did is we changed, instead of doing 1 small half classroom, we actually did small groups rooms that were much smaller so that they actually could serve students like 4 to 6 students. And those exist between the classrooms. And that was not only a recommended good practice, it allows for pullouts to happen immediately and not have to go to a separate part of the building to get support services. But it also was the nature of the existing building and the way that it worked out when you created the kindergarten and pre-kindergarten classroom sizes. There was a nice slot of space left between those two classrooms, and it just fell into place and made sense. You have a question?
Yeah, sorry about that. So if you could go back to the initial slide. Yeah. So the question I have is if so the programs that you guys developed, obviously was outside of, call it, the MSBA umbrella that, we're operating under right now for the other project that we're looking at. If this project decides to utilize MSBA, basically we go back and, try to bring this program into it. Would that mean we have to add another classroom? So
No.
like right now we're at 20. Okay.
No. MSBA always puts front and center the district's educational plan. And the part of the educational plan, it's everything from how you're going to teach, what you're going to teach, who you're going to teach, i.e. how, what age groups and things like that. But it also includes then you get to say your maximum class sizes and you get to say what targeting your utilization and things like that. I think that they would start to question if you got like way out of bounds of what industry standard. They might question you on it, but one classroom, they're not going to like bat an eye on that. And especially because I think that there's a good balance. Like, yes, they had more classrooms, but yet you have more support space and it all kind of balances out. So it's not like it's not out of whack. The other thing I find interesting is they don't in their standard space summary include things like speech pathology, OTPT, literacy coaches, and things like that, which pretty much every district has. So there's always those things that get added. You'll notice that there's some line items that are highlighted in orange or that light orangey color. Those were things that when we met with Superintendent Phelan was specifically on the list that must be included. Some of the other things like the storeroom for coaches and OTPT, that's just general good practices, things, that in, our experience, we know always makes sense and people always ask for. So there's some line items that we added and, some line items that were specifically requested.
Thanks. And just a quick follow-up too. So, the initial question was into quantity of classrooms. The next one is, and I think I know the answer just based on the response, but just asking it. So classroom size. So, we were carrying under the program 1,100 square feet. That one's, MSBA was 1,200 square feet. So, again, because everything's tying into square footage and, that's the baseline of the question.
So you'll notice over here in the notes, it says 1,100 to 1,300. So we are right. We are still within the limits. Some of the existing classrooms, like what you don't see here, is we didn't go through and enter every single existing. Some of them are actually below the 1,100, but the MSBA is very forgiving when it's an existing building, especially when it's like you're less than 5%. It's like, okay, it was 1,075 instead of 1,100. Nobody's going to make a big deal out of that 25 square feet. The other thing is that we pulled out the toilet rooms and we designed them as shared, like you'd have 2 toilet rooms side by side that could be used by either of the 2 classrooms that they sit between. And you'll notice that in theirs, it says with above. So 1,200, when you take out like approximately 55 to 60 square feet is actually, 1,140. So we're not out of bounds. I find that it's easier to keep track of when you separate the toilet rooms, especially if you start doing toilet rooms for students, other types of students that are super medically fragile and you need like even bigger toilet rooms. I always like to just list them separate because it allows you to keep track of those kinds of things. That's just my I guess, a little bit attention to detail in the way I like to organize things. But they're included in the 1,200 for the MSBA.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions on this page? You'll notice that art and music, we follow along health and physical education. We've just made things smaller, which I mentioned before. Media Center, ours is much smaller. That was discussed with Superintendent Phelan. Dining and food service, it's a little bit smaller and it's also distributed. Remember last week I talked about how by distributing it, it keeps the little kids from having to go up and down stairs and taking their entire 20-minute lunchtime just getting to the cafeteria area. So we distributed the dining on all the different floors, which we've done in precedent projects that we shared. Medical suite is spot on. Administration is a little bit less, but you'll notice that the where it says the teacher work, down there, it's with above. So it's not that it's zero, it's just that I put it in the small learning communities and I like to see that total and how it pencils out. So we put teacher work, one on each floor. Again, 3-story building, wanting to make sure that teachers are supported and are able to collaborate as well as have access to restrooms and other things like that. And then the last page is just something that nobody talked about, but every building needs it, and that's that custodial, storage, trash, receiving, those kinds of support, custodial maintenance functions, which is here. And then you can see our square footage for net square footage is actually a little bit less. And then we have the total square footage here. So one of the interesting things that if you did go back to the MSBA, they don't actually have standards for pre-K. Like when you look at the MSBA space summary template, and anybody can download it off of their website, under other, it will list pre-K, but there's no formulas, there's no like number of students, there's nothing in there. So I think it would be a conversation. When I did the numbers up above, I treated the pre-K similar to kindergarten. I actually used the 18 students per class, which is what you'll find in their MSBA formulas and things like that. But so it would be a conversation. They do support pre-K, but how they would support it would be a conversation. The other thing that I would put on here just with zeros, but just as a reminder and maybe get people thinking, well, what else could we do? The mansion, again, business use, you can bring professionals in there. You could do professional development for your teachers. It could be a destination where, you do have people coming from all over the district for learning. And the other thing that I just wasn't sure of whether we should or should not include was a security office for a school resource officer or anything like that. I'm not thinking that so much about the kids acting out and having to put them in detention, but sometime with this age group, it's more about custody and other things like that. It's the parents you have to worry about, but I didn't include it. But there's, again, you've seen that you have flexibility. That school resource officer also, his office, like where he sits every day as a professional, could be in the mansion, even though they may be walking around and observing, like drop off and pick up and doing all of the things that somebody like that would do. Their office and locker and that sort of thing could be in the mansion. So I wasn't too worried about, oh, does it fit? There's plenty of space.
So one other question, Jonna, too. So your grossing factor of 1.43, can you guys talk a little bit, basically how you arrived at that and essentially what it is for others that might not be aware?
Sure. So this is a theoretical program. Like we're doing calculations to determine how many classrooms based on how many students and how many students per class and all of those kinds of things. And then we are also making some of the calculations like sizing the staff lunchroom based on the number of staff and that sort of thing. It's theoretical. It's not absolute until you actually start designing it. And especially with an existing building, there will be some ups and downs, like some will be bigger, some will be smaller. You come to a net square footage based on that program. Well, then, how big is your building actually going to be? How much does corridors, walls, mechanicals, stairs, elevators, all those things that are not part of that space program, how much bigger is your building going to be? And, DLR Group has been doing schools. Literally, it was our first sector that, practice sector school, building type that we ever did 60 years ago. They've literally been building schools and designing schools and evolving and even doing research on best practices in schools for 60 years now. It has been our, just from all of our data sets, the 1.43 is an average. Some places go smaller. North Carolina, for instance, it's 1.37. Some places go larger, but the average between all of them is about 1.43. Now, MSBA, they allow you to have a grossing factor up to 1.5, which is why you see that number below there. It's a range. Like when we actually designed the building, and if we were actually to take this to the next step and started really getting into the nitty gritty and sitting with focus groups and all of that, we would want to be within that range of the 89.64 and the 94.122 for this enrollment. Obviously, if the enrollment goes down, then our number goes down. But there are some spaces that don't change very much. The kitchen doesn't change very much. The gross motor room doesn't really change. The size of the art room, the music room, all of those kinds of things. There's a lot of the spaces that okay, you're either going to have an art room or you're not. And so there's a lot of it that stays the same. And by reducing the number of students, it just means that it's, there's typically more square foot per student. You get greater efficiency the larger the school is. Now, that's not to say I'm advocating for large schools. There does seem to be a sweet spot, though, for elementary schools right around between 450 students and 600 students. And, for pre-K, it's maybe not quite as many, but that's 450 to 600 is actually a really good number to shoot for. So, we're with either option 2 or option 3, you're right in the sweet spot.
If I could ask just one other follow-up, Jonna, too. So, for just thinking outside the box, because it may come up outside this meeting when the question's asked. So would there be a possibility, in your professional opinion, if we were to build option 2 as a 2-level addition, and then sometime in the future add a 3rd level to that? Even though theoretically, yes, you could do it, but practically, is that possible?
So I just have to say that it's funny that you should ask. I have done that once in my career, and it was in Milton. Mm-hmm. The Milton Medical Office Building. This is just probably like showing you how old I am. The Milton office building was built as a 2-story building. The structure was sized to add a 3rd story. And later, actually, in a very short period of time, they came back and we added it. It is because it was planned for, it wasn't as difficult as you might think. Now, for a population like this, it might be scary, but it actually wasn't that invasive. We designed everything such that, literally the columns had everything ready. You just open up the roof, you set the steel on, you bolt it into place, and it actually went really quick. But it still meant that there was a lot of noise and, people tromping up and down and scaffolding on the outside so that the contractors didn't have to go through the building. And there was a lot. It is possible, but I would honestly, if you thought you wanted to expand, I would probably work to build beside as opposed to on top. And maybe even thinking about preparing the groundwork or something like that. Okay, if we know that we need to build in the hill, well, maybe we build in the retaining wall that becomes the foundation. And then that's just a flat area for play until which time you're ready for it. I think you just have to think about, well, what spaces are we leaving out? And how many of those spaces are we leaving out? Little projects are more expensive than big projects on a cost per square foot. So when you go back to build the addition, how big is the addition? I think would be something that would have to be balanced out very, very carefully. It's almost better to shell space, to say, all right, we're going to build all 3 floors, and then we're just only going to build, these classrooms are not going to be built out over here, or these spaces over here are not going to be built out. You still got to have egress and all that kind of stuff, but that might actually pencil out better than the other option of building later on. But yes, technically you can do it, and I have done it at least once in my career. Don't recommend it, though.
All right. Peter's got his hand up.
Peter?
Yeah.
I'm trying to do my best to keep an eye on it.
And thanks for this presentation. Are there any large costs for the town that are outside the scope of like the bottom line numbers we're looking at? For example, and this might be asking something that's perhaps outside scope of the ask, but I guess I'm just raising it in case you or Sean has thoughts on that. But and I'm thinking about like large items. For example, perhaps some necessary construction or changes are triggered at our existing elementary schools to deal with shifts in population to if there's any changes to kind of, the kindergarten classrooms that we'll no longer be using at the other elementary schools. That wouldn't strike me as a relative to these numbers, like a major cost, but I was just trying to think of any other sort of items for the conversation, again, perhaps outside this meeting, if there's any other big items that aren't relative to this property, this address, but to the broader consideration of the town.
So do you want to, I can tell you my first thoughts, but I want to hear, Sean, do you want to start that or you want me to? It's honestly things like moving and packing up and then repainting and patching, repairing all of the spaces you've just moved out of.
Yeah, the other part of it too is, or my anticipation from, the existing schools, we're going to be taking all the pre-K, K classes out. So those are the 1,200 square foot classes that if they're going to get turned over into regular classrooms, then we're going to install walls, subdivide them, and put that back to like a 900 square foot classrooms with additional professional space or other space there. So that goes into kind of that renovation cost would be part of it.
Can I just add one more thing there?
Yep.
So when you add those classrooms, you also have to think about operationally who's going to be in those classrooms. So that's another consideration because you're adding classrooms to each of those schools.
Yeah, the staff. You're basically
Exactly.
taking staff. And even potentially, if you did the 3-story option, you'd be increasing staff here. And then you would also potentially then need new staff to fill those classrooms.
So yeah, just to chime in on the existing schools, the intent would be to take existing classes that are operating in art, music, other converted spaces and putting them back into traditional classrooms or, reestablishing art and music spaces like that have all been taken over.
Right.
So it wouldn't be a wholesale addition of staff to accommodate that. It's basically reallocation within the existing spaces.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, Sean, I just wanted to ask you, because you gave us the factor for the project costs versus construction costs. Where does furniture live? Because furniture is not in the construction cost, and we just need to make sure that it's covered.
Yeah, that was covered under the previous the 30%.
Okay.
What we have is that adder onto the overall construction cost. That included FF&E. So the way we arrived at that, just for the committee's understanding too, our previous construction cost that we had in July of 2024 was 133 million construction cost, and then we added a 30% adder on top of that, which was 40 million. So I know in an email earlier this week, or I had sent, it was 35%. It was actually 30%. And then we got a revised project cost in November, and Sean Burke, you guys might remember this too, as we went through the previous project and did some revisions, we were able to reduce that construction cost from 133 million down to 128, 129 million. So just for members of the school building committee, that was kind of the discrepancy on that email that I was sending, whether it was a 30% or 35% adder. It should be a 30% adder. So to see see if others on the committee have any questions or comments or anything in general, in regards to the overall programs that we're seeing.
The only other thing is I wasn't sure when you first,
Mm-hmm.
they were asking the question about other unknowns. The things that always get you in trouble is something in the soils, hazardous materials, like poor soils or contaminated soils or hazardous materials. Those are always the big items from an overall project perspective that can be unknowns, that can send a project, cause problems with the budget. Nathan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. You had mentioned earlier in the conversation that this sort of project would begin with a demographic study that would then inform a good deal of the design. I don't know if this is a question for you, Jonna, or for Sean or someone else. We have done a lot of demographic studies
Okay.
that have led to the place that we are today. Would we, can you just talk about like what of the work we have done is applicable here, and where would we need to do new demographic work, and what might that look like that's unique to, the particular early childhood set of buildings that we're looking at here? Like, have we done the demographic work we need to do at all to inform this, or would we be kind of starting over?
Sean, you is probably better able to answer that. I don't know what demographic studies you have done. So first thing that I would ask is like, how old are they? And do you feel like now that you're sufficiently away from COVID that everything is back? And is there anything that's popped up in the town with regard to housing and other things like that would skew it? But if you went back to the MSBA, then as you know, because you've just been through the process, they also do their own demographic study and they would tell you what the enrollment is. But I don't know, Sean, do you feel like the demographic information that it's recent, or maybe, I don't know, who knows what demographic, how old it is, and if you feel comfortable with it?
Yeah, and John, do you mind to stop sharing your screen just so we get
sure,
picture
sorry.
view of kind of yeah, no,
Absolutely.
totally fine, and thank you guys. Yeah, so my take on that, Nathan, is we kind of got prescribed this program from school committee in May, I think, late May. When we started looking at this, we hadn't really dove in to look at demographics for any of this stuff for that. But I think, part of the one thing that kind of pops out to me is, a lot of this has gone on kind of over the summer, and as a number of us are parents, we've got other things going on over the summer. So I think come September, October, when this stuff hits town meeting, it'll be news to a lot of people. I think that the key thing is understanding from a parent's perspective of transportation wise. Right now pre-K and K all go to individual, the 4 elementary schools that we have right now, and now it would all consolidate down to here. But so that's one thing for me from a parent's point of view we have to touch on. The demographics end for enrollment and what the trending of that looks like. We haven't done that yet. And then if we go back to MSBA, like Jonna said, MSBA would perform that to look at it. But I think that the key part was just looking at option 2 that was presented, basically accounts for where we're at today. And then option 3 for, an additional 10,000 or 12,000 square feet or whatever it was, basically, provides opportunity for us to kind of be a little more future proof.
So thanks, Sean. That's helpful. So just to play that back, basically the demographic studies that we have done to date are fit for purpose for the MSBA program and the sort of school design we've been considering under that pathway. they can't be really repurposed for this project. We would need to undertake additional analysis. I mean, MSBA would do their own analysis, as you said, but we would want to undertake separate analysis that's specific for an early childhood design.
Yeah, correct. So
Okay.
to kind of frame, we've had two presentations tonight, one from PMA Group, and then, one from DLR. And I'm stating this more for, public or something like that, almost as like trying to capture everything that's been presented tonight. The initial presentation from PMA was in regards to our MSBA project. That MSBA project currently right now has 3 design options that we're looking at. And those 3 approved design options are a addition renovation to Collicock Cunningham School to accommodate approximately 1,400 students, a new elementary school K-5 for 495 students, or a middle school grade 7 and 8 with an enrollment of 660 students. And either of those new builds, there was a preschool component to both of them, separate from that enrollment. So if MSBA will only allow us to consider properties that are under control of the town at the time when we're doing this stuff. So right now, they won't allow us to consider Labouré because the town does not own it. If we purchase Labouré and then own it and control it, then we can potentially bring that under the umbrella of MSBA, but it would require us to go back to do an enrollment analysis to develop that as essentially a 4th option under that umbrella of MSBA. So under that, I think while they would be doing the kind of demographic analysis that Nathan was referring to, we'd also kind of do our own homework on a lot of that stuff, as far as this committee, and mainly because up to, say, June, we hadn't considered a pre-K school for that. So we've kind of been more focused on trying to get this program established for what an overall space would look like, and then the overall costs associated with that to help inform the select board on this, decision that's coming up in the next month. I hope that helps, Nathan. So let's see if anybody else has any questions or comments. Seeing none. John Shinali, honestly, I want to say thank you. I know this has been a lot of work in a short amount of time. You know what I mean? We appreciate it. We're looking forward for you guys to attend tomorrow night's select board meeting. As Peter requested previously to have you guys in attendance. I know you guys are planning on that. I will be remote because I'm traveling right now. But Mark Loring will be in attendance with you.
Great.
So, I'll be working on, if you can get me the kind of final graphics, Shinali, I can work on getting the slide deck together for tomorrow night.
Yeah, so I'll update the PowerPoint with that one slide change, and then I'm also going to send you the draft of the final report so you can pull any other images from there. The one thing that won't be in that report is the executive summary, which will get completed sometime tomorrow or Wednesday, and then get you the final report before the end of the week. But you'll have all the images and all the statistics that you need for tomorrow's slide deck. And obviously, if you need help, just let me know.
Yeah, but I just want to have a qualifier. We've been moving really, really fast. And so literally we're still editing, and
I have not spell checked anything. I should caveat. I have not had time to spell check anything.
We're still trying to just make sure that we've got everything, because we've been in production mode over the last 2 weeks in a pretty high intensity. So, we're still going back through and doing our own review. And so we want to make sure that it's right.
Yeah, I appreciate if the draft that I send you tonight does not go, because we'd like to review it before it goes a little bit more public.
I want to say, as a fellow architect, I thought it was a really good presentation, very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Glenn. I
you.
appreciate
The
it.
graphics were great. I'm a graphics guy, and the graphics were excellent. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That actually warms my heart. Thank you so much. I'm glad people appreciate it.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to ask, as like a future ask, but you already had it as one of those slides, was like a massing, like a 3D, if you had something like that of some of those isometrics, and really happy to see that you guys have that too. So again, thank you.
And in the report, we actually have it just as a plain simple mass. For this, just this PowerPoint we included so you could see the uses as well, but we have it so that everything existing is white and everything new is a light yellow, so that you can just see simply what does it look like, how does it compare. So we do have more graphics in the report than what's here in the PowerPoint.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and feel free to stay on. We're just going to talk about future meetings, and then or feel free to jump off. I know it's starting to get late. And again, thank you for all your work.
I actually have to run. I have family issue that I have to attend to.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to agenda item number 6, which is our future meetings. So, we're into August now, and, as Seamus and Sean brought up earlier, coming up in September, we're going to start getting, designer submittals in because of things hitting the streets. So ideally, what I'd probably like to do is just map out, the remainder of this month, and, see what people's schedules are like for this. It's probably best to, Seamus, if you want to kind of lead just from, the slides that you guys had before, or, the dates that you're kind of anticipating. Like I said, we'll just aim in August right now, and then we'll get to September, at our next meeting.
So, of course, we don't have to meet before RFS packages are due. We can provide updates on the distribution list and anything by then, so that there's no need to meet before the 9th. Of course, we would like to meet to finalize the designer selection subcommittee group, either before the 9th or sometime shortly after. It'd also be useful just once we receive all the proposals, just kind of give everyone an overall summary of all the presentations we received. So I'd like to have a meeting with the whole board before the 17th of September, which is when we have to get all of our review materials over to the MSBA. That way we can kind of give this committee the full picture of all the proposals we received and all of our reviews before we send it over to the MSBA. And then at some point in mid to late September, we'll meet with or honestly, maybe just the week before the designer selection panel, just meet with the subcommittee of those members and just to discuss the designer selection panel process. Those would be kind of the next 2 meetings that I'd want to target.
All right, so taking it one at a time. So I think the intention is to get the designer panel subcommittee set so they hit the ground running on the 9th, as Sean mentioned, when those packages arrive. So, and then we also have a site meeting that, it's not required of the entire committee or even the subcommittee on the 18th. So what I would propose just the members to see, August 24th, have another meeting, hopefully just a quick check-in, finalize what that designer selection committee would be. That's 3 weeks from tonight. And then, have the representatives there. I think at that time, we can have, I'm assuming we'll have a representative. I'm assuming school committee and probably select board would have a representative, similar to the makeup of how the school building committee is made up now. And that may give time to those other committees to kind of define who those members are, and then potentially for that subcommittee have that follow-on meeting, with you guys, Sean and Seamus. So just for members that are here, just looking at the 24th, just throw it out there to see if that works for anyone, most or not.
Good with me.
Same.
Glenn? All right, that was Nathan, I think. Glenn, 24th work for you, sir?
I'm good. Sorry, I couldn't put my button.
No, it's all good.
I
Scott?
think I'm good.
All right. Rob?
I'm good.
Robert?
I can make it.
Okay, thank you. Cool. Scott Tereshak?
Yeah. It's fine with me. 24th.
All right. Tim Lombard, if you can hear me.
I'm available at that time. I can hear you, and hopefully you can hear me. Every time I pressed one of these buttons earlier in the meeting, I lost everything.
Oh, good, man. You're good. Okay, and I think, make sure I got everybody on there. Peter, Sean, Nathan, and Nathan said, yep. So, yeah, let's aim for the 24th for our next meeting, and check in, and we'll get the designer selection subcommittee done at that one, and just just have a quick check-in with PMA to see where we're at.
Okay.
Say that again.
No, I just said okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. All right. So 24th it is. All right. If anybody else, unless anybody else has anything else on future meetings, we'll move on to our final agenda item, which is adjournment. So I'd entertain any motions to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Glenn. Nathan. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. I gotta admit that was the longest time it ever took to get a motion to adjourn, I think, out of any public meeting. So we'll do a roll call vote of everybody we got here. So Nathan Hutto.
Yes.
Scott Tereshak.
Yes.
Mark Loring.
Yes.
Peter Obersheimer.
Yes.
Tim Lombard.
Yes.
Glenn Hoffman.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you guys very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, everyone.